Hi everyone, this is just an introductory part for my next project that I'm going to be working on. After watching a video that the channel called Middle Earth SVG Ireland did, where they made an army display board, it kind of inspired me a little bit, because they took a regular tea tray, which was a plastic one, and turned it into a sort of mini display board. And I think this guy's going to be taking it to Ardacon, and it's really given me a great idea. So he used the plastic one and filled it with polyfiller. After he filled it with polyfiller, he gritted it, dry brushed it, and then generally did what you would do with terrain. He added a road and a couple of other bits as well. So I like that idea, and I like the idea of having something to be able to show you figures off on. Now, I don't have enough room in the flat I'm in at the moment to store terrain properly. So what I've thought I can do is, using this, I'll adapt the idea they had slightly. So I went out and I bought this from Amazon. I also got hold of some foam board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the sheet of foam board to fit inside here. Then once it's fit inside, I'm going to build a, it's not going to be a diorama as much, I want it to be pretty generic, but it will be a sort of like mini field layout with hopefully some bits and pieces on, so that I can keep my troops on it and use it as for display purposes. So the first step's going to be cutting this foam board to size, and then working out how much room I've got. So I think this is 5mm thick, and I think this is 30mm high. So I want to keep the lip so the things don't fall off, but I also want to be able to hold it. So I'm thinking, once the foam board's in, if I put the filler straight on top, it should be deep enough. I'm hoping the filler sticks. This is quite shiny, but yeah. My initial idea had been to make lips on the end of the foam board as well, by cutting thin strips and turning it up, so that it could hold the filler inside. But I don't know if that'll actually work very well. So what I'll do is I'll get on and cut this, and then once this is all cut and it all fits inside, I'll come back with another video sort of going through what I think might be the next best step. Cheers. So as you can see, I've managed to get a bit of work done on this. I've cut the foam board to size and then glued strips around the edge, because I'm hoping that I can stop too much of the filler from coming over. I want to be able to take the tray, for example like this, and then just slot that in there. So I can still carry it, I can still hold it, and the lip's going to stop any models falling off. I also thought that it would be a good idea to be able to take this out every so often. I need to put hooks or tabs on it, but then be able to swap it for another tray. So say I make another one of these, I could do perhaps an evil base for Lord of the Rings, or perhaps even my Napoleonic troops. I could put roads on it. It just means that this is interchangeable, so that I can use this tray for as many of these small board plates as I want. And this foam board only cost me £2.50 for an A2 sheet, so I've still got quite a bit left, and if I wanted to I could do this again. So that's this section. Gonna go ahead and apply the polyfiller now, and hopefully it won't be too messy. So a day or so later, and I've put the grit on, I've put sand on. I used quite a fine sand because I don't want any huge lumps getting in the way just yet. I want to pick where I'm going to put them. After that, I painted it with a brown and PVA glue mix to seal it, and unless you try really hard, nothing's coming off, so I'm really happy with that. The warping's still a little bit, but as it's just a display board and it's going to be inside this, it's not going to be put on anything else, I'm not worried at all. So the next step is I'm going to add some larger rocks. I'm going to add them, and then I'll sort of like blend them into the base with a bit of polyfiller as well. Part of me thinks I probably should have done that before I gritted it, but I think as long as I get the polyfiller on top of this and then seal it and paint it again, it shouldn't be too bad. But I've just got some slate chippings that I'm going to put sort of around the edges. Don't want too much in the middle, simply because I don't want that to get in the way of the models. So, coming along quite well so far. Not really much left to do. It's going to be a bit of experimentation when it comes to the flocking, because I've not flocked areas this large before, and it's static flock I've got, so I'm hoping it'll work. I bought some new PVA as well, so that'll be a bit stronger than the stuff I used to have. So fingers crossed that works. But yeah, it's turned out well so far. So I've just finished highlighting this. I originally gave it a coat of, this is a burnt umber, it's just a artist's acrylic. It's cheaper than using my model paints. Highlighted it once with a fawn colour, which is sort of like a medium, quite a light brown actually, quite light brown, so I went over that. And I normally stop there, I normally only do the one layer, but I decided to go up again with a, this is a light buttermilk, this is more of a cream, and it does look quite light. On the camera as well it looks kind of shiny, but I think that's just the colour. And I'm happy with it, it's alright. After PVAing it, I noticed a couple of spots where the PVA hadn't quite reached, so I put some more on, and I dried it with a hairdryer. And whilst I was doing it, this started getting all squishy. I think it might have melted the foam under the polyfiller. It's solid now, so I'm not too worried. So the next step is I've got a pack of these slate chippings and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange these probably around the corners, maybe some around the edges, because I want to keep the majority of it free to actually put models on. And then I'll glue these down. I may add some extra sand around the edges to make it look like they're buried, but it should be, they might actually be alright just placed on it, like rocky outcrops and things like that. So I've got the slate chippings. I've also got a couple other things in this bag here. Don't think I'm going to use them all. I've got some quite dark sand, which I suppose if I wanted to make anything look like it was burnt would be quite handy. Got some regular stones, which I will glue some of these on as well. They'll probably go in amongst some of the flock. Some white chippings, which aren't going to be any good for the effect I want to get on here. And the last one was some quite light sand, which again, it's more, that looks more like beach sand. After I've done that, I'm then gonna, that's the sand I used just to put it on there. Got a couple of types of flock as well, so I probably might mix some of these together and then put them on. The tufts I've got tufts for both colour, so I might try get a sort of like a, what's the word, gradient almost, like moving from one colour to another, or just mix up the patches a little bit. But yeah, so that's the next steps. Not far off being done actually, to be honest. Part of me is wondering whether I should put another coat of paint on part of this before I put the flock on, just in case you can see this through. But I'll see how it comes out. I'll see what it ends up like. I might just PVA that straight on and leave it at that. But thanks for watching, and that's this part done for now. So it's been a couple of days and I've had a bit more of a play around with this. I've stuck on some pieces of slate. Tried to glue them on originally with super glue, but of course there's nothing really for it to adhere to because of the texture on here. So I stuck it down with a bit of polyfiller, which again didn't really work, so then super glued it into the polyfiller, sealed it with some PVA, and then gritted over it and dry brushed it again. I smashed up some more slate with a big hammer and kind of just put it around the bottom to make it look a bit more natural. Overall I am really happy with it, it's come out nicely. I've dry brushed the slate a little bit just to make it stand out a little bit more, but I think it's just at the right sort of level now. I've also started adding static flock. I've only done it in this corner so far because I wanted to see how it came out against the sort of brown background, or the brown base even. It looks alright. I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. My only worry, I suppose, in a way, has been that when I have to come around and seal it, because I don't want this to rub off, which it most invariably will, because at the moment it's still going everywhere. So some people have suggested watered down PVA, which sounds like the most logical answer. Some people have mentioned spray varnish, which again makes more sense. It's just probably a slightly more expensive option. The only worry I've got with the PVA is that it might not dry clear, or it might flatten. It might pool on this and then flatten it down, which I don't really want. I want it to kind of try and stay fluffy at least. So I'm going to have to experiment, I think, a bit and see. I might do this corner and see how it comes out, or I might even have to try it out on another piece that I've got, but I think it should be alright. But yeah, that's it so far, and I'm going to crack on with the next part. So here's how the board's looking at the moment. I've added the flock and I've let it dry. The next step's going to be sealing it to make sure the flock doesn't come off, because it's quite delicate really. Even now, if I were just to blow it or to rub my finger over it, it is covered in the static flock still. I think the thing I've learned from this is that when I'm doing patches this big, a static flock applicator might actually be quite handy to have, because there are areas, if I tilt it, it's not quite sticking up as much as I would like, and whilst looking at it, you can't really see the problems. It does tend to look a little bit flat. There might also be the length of the flock. This is only 4mm flock, but that's something else to think of in future if I do any larger pieces. So after this, I've got to add the some more rocks, just randomly strewn, some tufts, and then that should be it, to be honest. I do need to add the tabs at the corners to make sure that they it can be lifted up easily and out of the tray. But if I just that's how it's looking so far. So it will sit in the tray, I've got room to pick it up, the models aren't going to slip off the edge. The warping, there is warping, but not enough that it actually affects this piece because it's sat in the tray. So this is it so far. The fit could have been slightly better, but again, because it's sat in the tray, doesn't really matter. It's just something so that if I go to tournaments, I can move my models around without having to bag them back up, and it's also a little bit nicer than just having the tea tray itself. So that's how far I've got, and I'll come back soon when I've completed the next part. So here it is. This is the finished piece. Put it inside the tray, but again, of course, it can come out whenever I need it to. If I wanted to do another, I'd probably do one slightly darker, because I think I'm going to go for a Mordor army next. So rather than base coating it brown and then highlighting it up through lighter browns and then a cream colour, I think I'd start off with a black base coat and then come up through dark greys, keeping it very dark. I finished it off last night by adding a few more small rocks, just here and there, some flower tufts and grass tufts, clump foliage, and then just a splattering of flowers, just to break it up a little bit so it's not all green. It's turned out really well. I can use it generically for anything, so if I want to, for example, show off Napoleonic stuff, can go on there quite easily. It's not great really for big bases, because the big bases sit over the details. Smaller bases quite easily just sit on there. I designed it really for my Lord of the Rings stuff, so these guys will sit quite happily on here. Just as somewhere to store models when you're walking around a tournament. They might fall over, but they shouldn't fall off the tray. my only worry is that people might think this looks really nice and the models look really nice on it, so they decide to try and kill my models as quickly as possible. So that could be an issue, but I'll come to that when it's later. But yeah, overall it's been a fun project. I think in total it cost me £8 roughly for the tray, £2.50 for the foam board, £5 for the filler. I did already have a lot of the grit, but I did buy extra grit, flock and rocks, which I think might have cost another £5. So altogether it's probably cost me less than £20 to do this. And yeah, it looks really good. I'll add in a couple of still photos as well at the end, just so you can get a closer look. But thanks for watching. Bye.